August 28, 1940. 11:52 p.m. RAF Station Biggin Hill. The air smells of burnt oil and hot metal. The last echoes of the evening scramble fade into the darkness as ground crews drag what's left of Spitfire MK-I Blue 2 across the tarmac. Its wingtip scrape, its landing gear collapsed, its engine cowling torn open like a crushed tin can. The mechanics say it's finished. The pilot barely walked away. But the squadron can't afford to lose another fighter. Not tonight. A low mist rolls across the airfield, illuminated in slices by swinging lanterns. Somewhere in the operations hut, a phone rings with the sharp, metallic tone everyone recognizes. Radar control has picked up something over Calais. A formation forming. A raid building. Dawn will bring trouble. And that is when Corporal Bill Taylor steps out of the darkness. He's only 23, his blue overalls stained with coolant and hydraulic fluid, but he moves with quiet urgency. The kind of man who has rebuilt more Spitfires in 3 months than most crews touch in a year. His boots splash through puddles as he circles the ruined aircraft, running his hand along the shattered wing root. "You're joking," one of the riggers mutters. Another shakes his head. "That one's a write-off, Bill. We got nothing left in the stores." Bill doesn't answer. He's listening, not to the men, but to the metal, to the silent language of bent spars, twisted ailerons, and broken Merlin lines, to the ticking of cooling parts that should be roaring at 300 miles an hour in less than 5 hours. Because at 5:10 a.m., the squadron must put 12 Spitfires into the air. Right now, they have 11. You can feel the weight of it, like every shadow on the field is watching him, waiting. Dawn patrols are a thin thread, holding Britain together during these desperate weeks. Lose one fighter and the formation weakens. Lose two and gaps open. Gaps the Luftwaffe know how to exploit. Bill kneels beside the fuselage and peers into the wrecked cockpit. The control lines are snapped. The starboard spar is cracked. The nose is smashed so badly the Merlin engine is practically exposed to the moonlight. A sane man would walk away. But Bill Taylor isn't sane. Not tonight. He stands, wipes the grease onto his trousers, and says the words the others think are madness. "We rebuild it." Someone laughs, the kind of laugh people make when they're too tired to argue. "From what, Bill?" "We've got no parts." "No parts here," he replies, nodding toward the far end of the dispersal. "But we've got 3 wrecks that aren't going anywhere. 3 Spitfires. 3 dead machines. 3 sources of ribs, flaps, hoses, linkages. Everything Blue 2 needs to fly again. A gust of cold night wind slips across the airfield. You can almost feel it against your own skin. Somewhere in the dark, a Heinkel crew is asleep, preparing for the morning mission they believe will weaken Biggin Hill's fighter cover. Bill turns to the men, a skeleton crew of exhausted riggers, armorers, and fitters who haven't slept in nearly 36 hours. His voice cuts through the night. "Get the lanterns. Get the jacks. Strip the wrecks. We start now." For a moment, no one moves. Then, slowly they do. Tools clatter. Lanterns flare. One by one, the crew gathers around the crippled fighter, shirts sticking to their backs, breath steaming in the cold. They don't know if this is possible. But Bill believes it is, and right now that belief is the only thing they have left. He rolls up his sleeves, picks up a wrench, and climbs into the broken fuselage like a surgeon entering an operating room. The first bolt turns with a scream of metal. It has begun, but the night is short. The wrecks are worse than they look. And somewhere across the channel, the Luftwaffe is already taking off. Will there be time? Midnight becomes 12:37 a.m. The tarmac glows in dim circles of lantern light as Bill Taylor tears into wrecked Spitfire's airframe with the precision of a man operating on instinct alone. The night is quiet except for the clink of tools, the rasp of metal being cut free, and the distant thump of anti-aircraft guns echoing from London, a reminder that the war is always close. The skeleton crew splits into 3 teams. One strips a derelict fuselage near the hedge line. One works on a wingless shell with a blown engine. One attacks a 3rd airframe that had belly landed days earlier. None of them speak much. They're too tired for conversation, too aware of what's at stake. Every minute lost is another mile The Luftwaffe closes in. Bill crouches under the starboard wing, running his fingers along the cracked main spar. It's worse than he hoped. A fracture right through the load-bearing web. If they miss it, the wing could shear off during a hard turn. A pilot could die. He exhales slowly. Pull the spar from K9817, he orders. One of the riggers looks up, startled. That wreck? Bill, that one hit the trees. The whole frame's twisted. Bill glances toward the mangled remains of aircraft K9817, lying crooked in the grass like the skeleton of some fallen bird. "I'll only need the spar," he says. "Get lanterns under it. Check the runout with a straight edge." The rigger hesitates, then nods and runs. You can almost feel Bill's focus tightening, like the air itself is shrinking around him. Sweat drips into his eyes despite the cold, and his hands work methodically. Loosen, remove, replace, tighten. Every bolt tells him something. Every vibration in the wrench is a warning or a promise. Around him, the crew scavenges like battlefield surgeons harvesting organs for a dying soldier. They bring pieces one by one. Aileron cables, a port side flap assembly, 2 lengths of hydraulic hose, a replacement canopy rail, half a dozen fasteners cannibalized from a frame nobody even remembers the number of. Bill inspects each with the gaze of a man who has memorized the anatomy of a Spitfire down to its bones. At 1:20 a.m., the first setback hits. The Merlin engine, the heart of the fighter, refuses to turn freely. The crankshaft took impact damage. It's binding. If it seizes in the air, the pilot will be a glider in the worst possible sky. One of the younger fitters mutters, "We're done for." "Bill, that engine's shot." Bill wipes his brow with the back of his wrist and leans in closer, feeling the resistance in the prop hub with both hands. Then he gestures sharply. "Bring the Merlin from N3275. The fitters blink. "Bill, that one's half disassembled." "Then assemble it." He says it without raising his voice, but it lands harder than a shout. A moment later, 2 men sprint across the field toward the dark silhouette of a tarp-covered engine stand. Time keeps slipping. 1:45 a.m. 2:10 a.m. The air grows colder, the lanterns dimmer. Tools keep dropping. Fingers bleed. Someone wraps a rag around their hand and keeps working. Bill crawls inside the fuselage to reconnect control lines. His world shrinks into a tunnel of wires, pulleys, and cramped space that smells of oil and metal and rain-soaked canvas. He can hear the others stripping parts from the donor wrecks. The metallic shrieks, the grunt of force, the soft curses under their breath. The horizon begins to turn the faintest shade of blue. Not daylight, not yet, but the warning of it. Dawn approaches. Bill slides out from the cockpit just as a replacement Merlin arrives, suspended by a wheezing chain hoist. It's filthy, missing a few fittings, and looks like a puzzle dumped out on the ground. But there's life in it. Enough to fly. Enough to fight. The crew scrambles to mount the engine. Bolts go in. Fuel lines connect. A magneto from another wreck is installed after a frantic 10-minute search. Bill checks every inch, running through the sequence in his head. Someone whispers, "We'll never finish the wing skins in time." Bill doesn't look up. "We will." But even he can see the sky lightening. The Luftwaffe will be airborne by now, forming up over France. 30 minutes, maybe less, before they cross the channel. And the Spitfire is still in pieces. Bill climbs onto the wing, lantern in hand, and sees something that freezes him in place. A structural element the aircraft cannot fly without is missing. It's nowhere on the field. And dawn is coming fast. A cold breeze sweeps across the airfield, flickering the lantern flames and carrying with the faint metallic ache of approaching morning. Bill stands perfectly still atop the wing, staring at the empty space where the starboard landing gear support trunnion should be. Without it, the gear cannot lock. And without locked gear, the Spitfire cannot take off, cannot land, cannot fight. "Check the parts bins again," someone calls. Bill shakes his head before the words even finish echoing. They've torn through every crate, every cabinet, every forgotten toolbox under every workbench on the field. They've stripped 3 whole wrecks to their bones. It should be here. It must be here. But it isn't. For the first time tonight, Bill feels the weight of the impossible pressing against him. His crew stops working, watching his face in the dim light. No one speaks. Even the night wind seems to hold its breath. One of the riggers murmurs, "Bill, we're out of time." Bill steps down from the wing, lantern swinging in his grip. The grass is wet beneath his boots. His mind races through every wreck they've ever dragged across this airfield. Every impact, every salvage order, every rumor of a Spitfire that had been stripped clean before they ever laid eyes on it. Then he remembers something, not a part, but a sound. 2 nights ago, a recovery team grunting, cursing, dragging something heavy from a crater beyond the far dispersal. A wreck so mangled they didn't even bring it back to the hangar. For a moment, Bill wonders if he's imagining it, a half-memory born out of exhaustion. But then his eyes lock on the mist-covered field stretching past the last hangar. "Lanterns," he says. "Come with me." The crew exchange confused looks but follow him, stumbling across the uneven ground. Their shadows stretch long and warped in the half-light as the sky hints at the earliest edge of dawn. They reach the crater, a shallow pit of mud, twisted metal, and abandoned debris. The crashed Spitfire lies half buried, its wings shattered, its nose sheared off, its tail snapped like a twig. No one bothered to strip it earlier. They'd assumed nothing was usable. Bill drops to his knees. "Check the starboard side," he says. They sweep mud away with bare hands, pulling aside rupture panels, peeling back skin that crumbles like burned paper. The ground is cold, the metal colder. Their breath mixes with the mist like smoke. Then a shout, "Bill, over here." He rushes to the far side of the wreck, nearly slipping in the mud. The rigger is kneeling beside a partly buried section of the landing gear assembly. "It's intact," the man says, eyes wide. Trunnions intact. Bill doesn't hesitate. Cut it free. Metal screams as hacksaws bite into the wrecked frame. Mud splatters. Lantern light dances across frantic hands and jagged edges. Every second is agony. The horizon turning from blue to bruised purple, then to a thin line of gold. At 4:28 a.m., the part comes loose. Bill lifts it with both hands. It's filthy, dented on one edge, but functional. A pulse thunders in his chest. Not relief, not yet, but possibility. They sprint back across the field, clutching the part like it's the beating heart of the machine they're trying to revive. By the time they reach the half-assembled Spitfire, the sky is glowing with a faint, merciless light. "Mount it." Bill orders. The crew surges around him, tools clattering, voices sharp and breathless. Sweat drips down greasy faces. Someone curses as a wrench slips. Another drops a bolt and dives after it into grass. Bill crawls under the wing, guiding the part into place with trembling hands. "Up a hair. Hold it there." Bolts tighten. Metal aligns. The gear linkage seats with a satisfying, solid click. For the first time tonight, the Spitfire stands a chance. But there's no time to celebrate, because at that exact moment, a runner comes sprinting across the tarmac from the operations hut, waving his arms and shouting breathlessly. Luftwaffe inbound. Radar reports 80-plus aircraft heading this way. Dawn patrol needs to launch in 20 minutes. Bill slides out from under the wing, wiping grime from his eyes. 20 minutes. One aircraft still half open. A Merlin engine untested. And 11 pilots waiting for a miracle. "Back to work," he shouts. But as they scramble, a new, even more dangerous problem reveals itself. One that could ruin everything they've done. A problem no one has noticed, except Bill. It's just a flicker, a single second where his eyes lock onto the underside of the Merlin engine. But it's enough. Something is wrong. Something critical. Something every exhausted mechanic around him has missed in their race against dawn. A faint sheen, a slow drip, a tiny silver thread running down the crankcase and forming a bead at the bottom of the sump. Oil. The brand new, hastily assembled Merlin is leaking oil. Bill crouches, wiping the drip with his thumb. It glistens dark and wet. Not residual spill. Not leftover grime. This is fresh, active, coming from a place no Spitfire can afford to leak from. If they start the engine like this, it could seize in minutes. If it seizes in the air, the pilot is dead. Bill swallows hard. Around him, the crew is tightening the last panel on the port wing, completely unaware that all their work may be about to collapse. He forces himself to speak calmly. Everyone stop for a moment. The crew looks up. Tools hover midair. None of them want to hear what comes next. Bill points at the leaking seam. We've got an oil blow-by at the rear cover. Gasket's not seated. One of the riggers sighs heavily. We don't have another gasket, Bill. No, Bill says, but we can make one. A silence falls. Make one? From what? Bill's brain is already sprinting. He's thinking of thickness, heat tolerance, rigidity. The kind of things only a man who's rebuilt more Merlins than he's slept hours would know by heart. He looks around. Canvas? No, good. Cardboard? Too weak. Rubber from the bicycle shed? Not heat resistant. Then his eyes land on something absurd. The leather fireproof tool roll, lying open beside the engine mount. Thick, durable, oil resistant. Enough material to cut a gasket. He grabs it. Bill, that's... I know what it is. He snaps. Give me shears. The crew watches in disbelief as Bill slices a perfect ring for his own issued tool roll. He measures the holes with a grease pencil, marking each port with surgical precision. No templates, no diagrams, just memory and instinct. The sky is glowing brighter now. Streaks of orange sliding across the horizon like fire licking the edge of the world. The first bird begin to chirp, oblivious to the incoming storm of aircraft speeding across the channel. Bill screws the makeshift gasket into place. The leather sits snugly, almost too snug, but it seals. He tightens the bolts, testing the line of the seam with the top of his fingernail. No give. Refill the oil, he says quietly. A fitter runs with a canister. The golden fluid pours into the reservoir, glugging rhythmically. Bill watches the seam, watches for the telltale glisten, watches for the betrayal of a drip that means failure. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Dry. He exhales for the first time in what feels like hours. Everyone step back, he says. We're going to test the Merlin. A young mechanic hesitates. Bill, if something's wrong, the whole thing might. I know. Bill climbs into the cockpit, planting himself in the pilot's seat. His hands move automatically. Fuel on, mixture rich, throttle cracked, mags to both. The crew forms a loose ring around the aircraft. Far enough to run if the Merlin decides to explode itself into shrapnel, close enough that they can't look away. Bill primes the engine, looks at the horizon, sunlight cresting. Every second counts. He presses the starter. The Merlin coughs, sputters, chokes. The crew tenses. Bill tries again. The starter whirs, and suddenly, with a thunderous bark, the Merlin roars to life. A violent chest-shaking sound that rolls across the entire field like an animal waking hungry. Flames spit from the exhaust stacks. The prop thrashes the morning air into ribbons. The whole Spitfire shudders and snarls like it knows it's been reborn. Mechanics cheer, a broken, exhausted sound of disbelief. But Bill doesn't cheer. He leans over, eyes locked on the oil seam, watching for any hint of failure. Nothing. Not a drop. The engine is good. The Spitfire will fly. He shuts the Merlin down, climbs out, and wipes his hands on his already ruined overalls. Finish the panels, he says. We have minutes. Because now the sun is rising, bright and merciless. And over the radio, the call everyone's been dreading crackles through the speakers. Bandits crossing the coast. Multiple formations. Scramble will be in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. 1 plane to finish. 12 pilots to arm and brief. A Luftwaffe raid incoming fast. And Bill still hasn't told the squadron leader what he's about to do next. Something no mechanic has ever attempted. Something that might get him court-martialed or save the entire squadron. The Spitfire is almost whole now. Panels going on. Fasteners tightening. The sunrise catching on its fresh metal like a blessing the aircraft hasn't earned yet. Exhaust still steams from the Merlin's test run. The smell of hot oil, burnt residue, and cold morning air mixes into something sharp and electric. But Bill isn't looking at the aircraft. He's looking at the squadron dispersal, where squadron leader Thomas "Tommy" Harwood is striding across the field with the grim determination of a man about to send his pilots into the teeth of a Luftwaffe assault. Harwood spots the ground crew around a half-complete fighter, and his eyes widen. "You can't be serious," he says, breath misting in the air. "Tell me that wreck isn't what I think it is." Bill steps forward, wiping his hands. "It'll fly, sir." Harwood glances at the still open panel on the starboard wing, the leather gasket peeking from the seam, the ladder still leaning against the cockpit. He shakes his head. "You've worked a miracle before, Taylor," he says, voice tight, "but miracles don't come in pairs. We can't risk a pilot in an untested fighter. We're already short 2 men. Bill's jaw clenches. He's been expecting this. The air raid sirens begin to wail in the distance, long, mournful cries rolling across the station like the breath of a giant waking from sleep. Operations runners sprint between huts. Pilots scramble into flight gear. The world is accelerating toward violence. Harwood turns away. "Finish what you can, but it's staying on the ground." And this is where Bill knows he has to cross a line. "Sir," he calls out. Harwood stops, turns. Bill takes a deep breath. "If it stays on the ground, you're going up with 11. You'll hit that raid shorthanded. They'll see the gap in the formation. They'll exploit it. You know they will." Harwood's jaw twitches. He knows Bill is right. Every missing fighter weakens a line. But a Spitfire rebuilt in one night? Pilots depend on their engines like they depend on their own heartbeat. "It hasn't even flown a circuit," Harwood says quietly. Bill looks him straight in the eye. "Then I'll fly the test circuit." The yard falls silent. Mechanics freeze. A tool drops and clanks against the tarmac. Even the sirens, for a moment, seem distant. Harwood's face goes pale. "You are not a pilot." Bill steps closer. "No, I'm the man who knows this aircraft better than anyone alive. I know every bolt, every cable, every seam. And if there's something wrong with it, I'm the one who built it. I should be the one to take the risk. You'd be killed if anything goes wrong. And one of your pilots will be killed if this plane doesn't go up with the squadron." A long, heavy silence hangs between them, the kind that turns the stomach, the kind that changes fates. Off in the distance, the dull hum of approaching aircraft begins to tremble across the morning air. Low, far, growing. The Luftwaffe is on the way. Harwood glances at the sound, then back at the Spitfire. Still wounded, still incomplete, but alive. "Bill," he says softly, almost pleading, "if I let you do this, I'm signing your death certificate." Bill's voice drops to a whisper. "Let me try, sir." Harwood closes his eyes. You can see the battle in his face. Duty against desperation, reason against necessity. Finally, quietly, he gives the smallest broken nod. 30 seconds, he says. You get 30 seconds airborne. If it holds, it flies in formation. If it doesn't, I won't bring it back in one piece. Bill finishes. Understood. Harwood walks away, shoulders tight, heading to brief the pilots. For a moment, Bill sees something like fear in the man's stride. Not fear of the Luftwaffe. Fear of what he's just allowed. The mechanics close in around Bill. "You can't do this, mate. It's madness. Bill, that plane hasn't had proper engine hours. You try to lift her and she might spin you into the ground." Bill holds up a hand. "I built it," he says. "I'll trust it." He climbs a ladder, exhausted, filthy, shaking from adrenaline and no sleep, and lowers himself into the cockpit. The seat feels strange without a pilot's weight, but familiar under his hands. He flips switches, checks gauges, settles the harness across his chest. The crew pulls the chocks. The prop is still. The field is silent except for the rising hum of enemy bombers approaching from across the sea. Bill takes a deep breath and presses the starter. What happens next will change the fate of the squadron and define Bill Taylor's name forever. The first pale streaks of morning stretch across the sky like thin brushstrokes of silver. The storm has passed, leaving everything slick and shining. Puddles reflecting the skeletal frame of the rebuilt Spitfire. Frost clings to the wingtips. The air tastes metallic, sharp, alive. Bill Taylor stands a few feet back, hands numb, legs trembling. He's been awake for nearly 23 hours. His coveralls are stiff with oil. His eyes burn as if filled with sand. But he doesn't blink, not yet. He watches leading aircraft man Davies tighten the last panel with a torque wrench that has lost its grip more times tonight than Bill can count. The engine cowling settles into place with a final metallic click. For a moment, no one speaks. The hangar is quiet except for the groan of distant carts and the whistle of the wind through broken glass panes overhead. The skeleton crew forms a loose circle around the aircraft, this patched-together hybrid of three wrecks that should not, by any sane measure, be capable of flight. Bill steps forward and rests his hand on the nose. It's warm from the heater carts. Somehow, impossibly, it feels alive again. "You did it," Davies whispers, but Bill doesn't answer, because he knows what comes next, and whether this night means anything at all depends on a single sound. The sound of the Merlin engine roaring back to life. Pilot Officer Red Carter jogs toward them, helmet under his arm, cheeks flushed from the cold. He stops dead when he sees the Spitfire. "Bloody hell, Bill, you weren't joking." Bill gestures without ceremony. "She's yours. Take her up." Carter steps closer, tracing the improvised panels with his fingertips. "Are you sure she'll hold?" Bill meets his eyes, exhausted, hollow but steady. "If she doesn't, I'll build you another before lunch." Carter laughs once, sharp and disbelieving, then climbs onto the wing root and into the cockpit. The canopy remains open as he settles in, straps tight, gloves stiff from the cold. Technicians pull the starter trolley closer. Electrical cables snake across the concrete toward the engine. The ground crew exchanges glances. Some pray quietly, some don't, but every single one of them steps back. Bill raises his hand. Contact. The switch clicks. A growl, a cough, a heavy metallic shudder running from propeller to tail. Bill feels his heart stop. Carter primes the system once more. This time the Merlin engine catches. A sputter, a rising whine, then a deep chest-rattling roar that fills the entire airfield. The Spitfire shakes like a creature reborn. Exhaust bursts from the stacks in bright, furious pulses. The propeller becomes a shimmering disk of blurred steel. The crew erupts, whoops, cheers, exhausted laughter. Someone slaps Bill's shoulder so hard he nearly falls over. But Bill doesn't cheer. He simply closes his eyes. Relief hits him like a wave, warm, overwhelming, almost painful. Because in that moment, with dawn burning over the horizon and the Merlin singing again, he knows. They are not defenseless. Not today. Carter taxis out onto the runway, raising a salute as he passes the men who made this impossible moment real. Bill returns a gesture with trembling fingers. The Spitfire pauses at the runway threshold. Then throttle open, wheels rolling, tail lifting. The hybrid warbird surges forward, gathering speed, cutting through the mist like a silver blade. Bill holds his breath as the wheels leave the ground. She flies. Against every rule of logic, against every broken rivet and mismatched panel, against fatigue, fear, and time itself, she flies. But just as Bill lowers his hand, just as the crew starts to breathe again, a siren begins to wail across the base. A long, rising howl that freezes every man in place. Incoming raid. A formation big enough to shake the coastline. And the squadron is still one aircraft short, unless Bill's miracle machine can climb fast enough to meet them. The air raid siren howls across the field, long, rising, merciless. A sound every pilot fears, every mechanic dreads. A sound that means one thing. They're coming. Bill Taylor looks up instinctively. The dawn light is still thin, the sky a cold wash of gray and rose. But on the horizon, barely visible, just beyond the soft glow of sunrise, something moves, a smear of dark specks, growing, spreading, multiplying. Luftwaffe bombers and escorts, a formation large enough to blot out half the sky. Carter's already airborne, climbing hard, banking left as he falls in with the first 3 Spitfires scrambling into formation. The rest of the squadron sprints to their aircraft, pulling on helmets, slamming canopies shut, shouting over the engine noise. Mechanics rush to push chocks aside, to wave aircraft forward, to clear the runway. But Bill just stands there, because he knows something no one else does. That Spitfire, the one Carter is now coaxing into a steep ascent, is held together by human stubbornness, borrowed metal, and a night of impossible improvisation. Bill hadn't built it to win a dogfight. He'd built it to survive one. The squadron commander, squadron leader Terrence Miller, skids to a stop beside him. Taylor, is Carter's kite fit to join the fight? Bill opens his mouth. Nothing comes out. He forces himself to inhale. She'll fly, he says, but don't push her too hard. Miller squints at him. We don't get to choose today. He sprints off before Bill can answer. The ground trembles with the growing roar of Merlin engines. One by one, Spitfires leap from the runway, claws scraping free of earth, rising toward the dark swarm advancing across the channel. Bill watches them go, his heart climbing with each one. Come on, please let her hold together. The control tower bursts to life with frantic radio chatter. Technicians run cables, officers shout bearings and altitudes. A gust of wind cuts across the field, carrying a distant rhythmic thunder, the thrum of Junkers and Messerschmitts approaching at combat speed. Bill wipes his hands on his coveralls. They're shaking. Davies appears beside him, breathing hard. Think she'll make it? Bill doesn't look away from the sky. I think she'll make someone's miracle, he says quietly, but I just hope it's not Carter's last. High above, the first contrails converge like white scars carving across blue. The Spitfires split into pairs, fanning out, diving, climbing, moving in tight, practiced arcs. The Luftwaffe formation begins to shift, slowly reshaping itself into a spiraling defensive cage. And then it happens. A sharp flash, a burst of tracer fire, a bomber wing dipping as a Spitfire rakes across its engine. The sky ignites. From where he stands, Bill can't hear the gunfire, but he feels it in his bones, in the rising tension inside his chest. The entire airfield watches, necks craned, breaths held, as 24 aircraft twist and tear through the morning light. Carter's Spitfire dives sharply, too sharply. Bill inhales through his teeth. Easy, don't pull her apart. The aircraft rolls out of dive just in time, leveling off behind a Messerschmitt. Carter fires a short burst, bright, lethal sparks that streak across the sky. The enemy fighter wavers, smoke trailing behind it, then spirals downward. He got him, Davies whispers, but Bill barely reacts, because Carter immediately yanks the Spitfire upward into a brutal climbing turn, a maneuver the original aircraft could handle. But this one is stitched together from wrecks. Panels strain, rivets tremble. The engine groans at the sudden G-force. Bill grips the railing in front of him until his knuckles whiten. Come on, girl, don't fail him now. Above, the Spitfire shudders. The tail vibrates violently. And Carter, realizing something's wrong, cuts power just enough to ease the load. But was it soon enough? The aircraft stabilizes, but smoke begins to trail faintly from under the engine cowling. Not thick, not catastrophic, but smoke. Bill's stomach drops. Something is about to give, and Carter, miles above Earth with enemies all around him, has no idea which part of his plane is about to stop being a plane.